بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Respected listeners, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Yesterday we spoke about Surah Al-Fath, and today we move on to Surah Al-Hujuraat. Al-Hujuraat meaning the apartments, and these refer to the apartments referred to here are the apartments or the quarters of the Azwaj al-Mutahharat of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first few verses Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tuqaddimu bayna yaday Allahi wa rasulihi wattaqullah. O you who believe, do not proceed ahead of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and fear Allah. Indeed, Allah is all hearing, all knowing. Then Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu la tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawti an-nabiyyi wa la tajharu lahu bil qawli ka jahri ba'dikum li ba'din an tahbata a'malukum wa antum la tash'urun. O you who believe, do not raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and do not loudly call out to one another like you do to one another, lest your actions become wasted whilst you are unaware. إن الذين يغضون أصواتهم عند رسول الله أولئك الذين امتحن الله قلوبهم للتقوى. Indeed, those who keep their voices low near the Messenger of Allah, these are those people whose hearts Allah has tested for taqwa. For them is forgiveness and a great reward. The first verse was revealed. What happened was, some people from the tribe of Tamim came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one of the discussions that they had was the appointment of a leader, a ruler for the tribe. Now, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, he suggested Qa'qa ibn Ma'bad, while Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu, he proposed Aqra ibn Habis radiyallahu anhuma. Now, Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhuma both discussed this for a while, and during this discussion, their voices were raised. In fact, according to some narrations, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu says that you're saying this just to oppose me. So Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu said, no, I'm not saying this just to oppose you. But then their voices got raised, and as a result of this, Allah revealed these verses that do not seek to proceed ahead of Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the same, in this surah, Allah speaks a lot about the respect and reverence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum are instructed to not treat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as just a friend or just another person, but to have the highest levels of respect for him. And they did. And if you remember, when I was just yesterday, when I mentioned about Urwat ibn Mas'ud, when he came to speak to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to negotiate during the time of Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, what did he say? He said, وَفَتُّ عَلَى الْمُلُوكِ, I have been a delegate for many kings. وَفَتُّ عَلَى قَيْصَرَ وَكِسْرَى, I have been a delegation to the Caesars and the Khosrows. وَاللَّهِ مَا رَأَيْتُ مَلِكًا قَطُّ يُعَظِّمُ أَصْحَابُهُ كَمَا يُعَظِّمُ أَصْحَابُ مُحَمَّدٍ مُحَمَّدًا sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But he says, by Allah, I have not seen any king whose people respect and revere him like the way Muhammad's followers respect and revere him. And then he went on to say, مَا تَنَخَّمَ نُخَامَةً إِلَّا وَقَعَتْ فِي يَدِ أَحَدٍ مِّنْهُمْ فَدَلَكَ بِهَا وَجْهَهُ وَجِلْدَهُ, that even his spittle doesn't fall to the floor, but it falls into one of their hands, and then he wipes his face and his body with it. And then the Urwat ibn Mas'ud, he carried on mentioning a few things, and that they wouldn't speak loudly in front of him and so on. So in this surah, Allah outlines these points and instructs the believers that the Prophet ﷺ is somebody who needs to be held with the highest of respect. And the ulama have said that this carries on and continues to the Islamic scholars and religious leaders. Once Prophet ﷺ saw Sayyidina Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu walking in front of Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. So he said to him that you are walking in front of a person who is better than you in this world and in the hereafter. Then he added that the sun has not risen or set on any man better than Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu in this world besides the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So even here, Abu Darda radiyallahu anhu was in a way reprimanded for walking in front of Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. And we learn from the ulama of the past that they had an immense level of respect for their teachers. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu is famous about him, that when he would go to learn of somebody, he wouldn't even knock on their door. He would just sit down. And when he would come and he would ask that, what is this person doing? So they'd say he's resting. So he'd say, okay, don't disturb him. And then he'll sit down. And once he did this, and when the Sahabi whose house he had come to woke up, saw him all covered in dust outside his door, he said, "Oh, cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why didn't you just knock?" He said, "No, I have come to learn, and I shouldn't inconvenience my teacher for that." Imam Mujahid rahmatullahi would say that we used to fear our teachers like the kings of our times. And again, this fear was this awe and respect for their teachers. So this continues. And this is it. Even though nowadays we're taught that everybody just needs to respect themselves, far from it. Islam teaches us, Islam respect is built into the core of Islam. Nowadays, in schools, the young have no respect. Well, when I say that, I don't mean it generally. I don't mean it for everybody, but I just mean in a general manner. You have schools where students have their legs stretched out in front of their teachers. I remember one of my teachers. He was just a lecturer. Well, he wasn't my teacher actually. He was a visiting lecturer that had come. So he was saying that I was giving a lecture, and this is in those university lecture halls. So you've got a large hall with seats ascending, and then at the front you've got a lecturer with a podium in front of him. And often you'd have a window in some corner. So he says that during the lecture I had to call one of the students to the front. So I called him, and he was a Turkish Muslim student. So I called him to the front, and he walked. All he had to do was walk down the steps and come to the front. But he walked all the way around the hall, and then he came. So I said to him, I says, "Why did you do that for? I called you to come here. You should have just walked straight through. Why did you walk all the way around?" So he says that this young chap, this young Muslim, he said to me that, "No, you are my teacher. And because of the light of that window, your shadow was going across these steps, and I couldn't step on your shadow. That's why I walked all the way around." He was a non-Muslim professor. He said, I started crying. And I was amazed at this young man's respect for his teacher, that he wouldn't even go across my shadow. And the ulama have said that this even continues, that when we are in front of the Rawdah of the Prophet ﷺ, or the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, not the Rawdah, the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, so even in the Rawdah, in the masjid, but in the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, even then, we should observe respect and speak quietly. Even the salam should be said quietly. Because, again, لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي لا تجهروا له بالقول. Do not call out to him. Because this is what the Bedouin would do. They would come out and this is, Ya Muhammad, ukhruj ilayna, that, oh Muhammad, come out to us. So then Allah says it would have been better for them had they waited for the Prophet ﷺ to come out to them. So even in front of the grave of the Prophet ﷺ, one needs to observe this respect. Unfortunately, nowadays people are arguing, shouting, making movies, selfies, astaghfirullah. This respect has gone completely. May Allah forgive us all. Now, so one of the verses were, do not raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet ﷺ, lest your actions become wasted. Meaning, if you are guilty of this, then it's possible that your actions will become wasted. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu says that after this, I would quieten my voice so much in front of the Prophet ﷺ that I'd have to often repeat myself. Thabit ibn Qais radiallahu anhu, when he heard about this verse, he began weeping because he naturally had a very loud voice, and according to some narrations, he actually sat at home and he wouldn't come out to the Prophet ﷺ anymore, and he just kept saying that, you know what, this verse has been revealed regarding me, and I have now become of the people of the fire. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he inquired from the Sahaba that, where is Thabit? I haven't seen him. So they said that, oh, he's at home, there's nothing wrong with him. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he asked him, what is it? Why haven't you come? So he said, I am the one who raises his voice above the voice of the Prophet ﷺ, and I speak loudly. So my actions have become void, and I am from the people of the fire. So the Prophet ﷺ said, no, rather you are from the people of Jannah. Sayyidina Anas radiallahu anhu says that it was amazing because we used to see him and he used to walk amongst us, but we used to know that he was from the people of Jannah. Subhanallah. Then we have the verse, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُنَادُونَ كَمِنْ وَرَاءِ الْحُجُرَاتِ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Indeed, those who call out to you from beyond the apartments, most of them are unaware. And were they to have remained patient until you come out to them, then this would have been better for them. And Allah is all forgiving, all merciful. What happened is that the delegation of Banu Tamim, when they came to Medina, they came in the afternoon. And they came to the Prophet ﷺ. He was resting at that time in one of his apartments. Now, these were Bedouin, and they weren't acquainted with social manners and etiquettes. So they stood out to outside the apartment and called out, Ya Muhammad, ukhruj ilayna, that, oh Muhammad, come out to us. So then this verse was revealed. They should have waited for the Prophet ﷺ to come out. Then Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu in ja'akum fasiqun binaba'in fatabayyanu an tusibu qawman bijahalatin fatusbi'u ala ma fa'altum nadimin. O you who believe, if a sinful person brings you a report, then verify its correctness, lest you harbour people out of ignorance, then become remorseful on what you did. What happened was, Harith ibn Dirar, the leader of Banu Mustaliq, and who was the father of Juwayriyah radiallahu anha, one of the Prophet ﷺ's wives, he came to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ invited him towards Islam and to pay zakah. So he embraced Islam, pledged to pay zakah, and he said that he would go to his people and invite them towards Islam and do the same as well. Now, whoever accepts my invitation, whoever becomes Muslim, then I'll collect their zakah, and on a designated day in the year, if you can send somebody to collect this money off me, then I'll hand it over to them. So Harith ibn Dirar, he did this, but however, the collector for zakah didn't come. So Harith ibn Dirar, he was worried that maybe the Prophet ﷺ had become displeased with him for something. So he decided that he would make his way towards the Prophet ﷺ himself. Now, the Prophet ﷺ had actually sent somebody by the name of Walid ibn Uqba to collect these zakah from them. However, he had some previous enmity with Banu Mustaliq, and he was worried that if he turned up there, they would kill him. So he returned and he said to the Prophet ﷺ that they refused to give zakah and they threatened to kill him. And according to one narration, he actually did come to Banu Mustaliq, and when they had heard that he was coming, they came out all to welcome him, and he thought that because of previous hostilities, they were coming out to harm him. So then he returned and he told the Prophet ﷺ that, look, I went to them, but they were going to kill me and they refused. So this is what Allah says, that if you who believe, if a transgressor comes to you with some news, then ascertain the truth before you do something of which you become remorseful. Now, what had happened was the Prophet ﷺ didn't launch an attack on Harith ibn Dirar. He actually sent Sayyidina Khalid ibn Walid to do some investigations. Khalid ibn Walid, on his way towards Banu Mustaliq, he met with Harith ibn Dirar on the way, and then it was clear that there's been an error here, and Walid ibn Uqba had been sent, but he hadn't reached them, but they didn't know anything about it, and that they didn't want to kill him or anything like that. Now, following this as well, when some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum had heard that Banu Mustaliq had apostated and were refusing to pay zakah, they expressed the view that we should fight them immediately. But the Prophet ﷺ, he actually didn't accept Walid ibn Uqba's report anyway, because circumstantially it just didn't add up. So he sent Sayyidina Khalid ibn Walid, and then matters were cleared up. However, Allah revealed the next verses that know that among you there is the messenger of Allah. If he obeys you in many matters, you will certainly fall into hardship. But Allah has endeared to you the faith and caused it to look beautiful to your hearts, and has made detestable to you disbelief and sins and disobedience. Now, after talking about some points in relation to the rights of the Prophet ﷺ and how he should be respected and revered, Allah then speaks about some of our mutual rights with one another. So, the right a Muslim has over another, Allah says from here, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا يَسْخَرْ قَوْمٌ مِّن قَوْمٍ عَسَىٰ أَن يَكُونُوا خَيْرًا مِّنْهُمْ وَلَا نِسَاءٌ مِّن نِسَاءٍ عَسَىٰ أَن يَكُنَّ خَيْرًا مِّنْهُنَّ. O you who believe, let not a people mock another group. lest they be better than them, nor a group of women mock another group of women, lest they be better than them. And do not defame yourselves, and do not call each other names. Now, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this mockery, Allah addresses men and women separately to give emphasis that this is something that we often take to be casual or unimportant. However, this is very important in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that the rights of others and that they are not mocked and their honor isn't tarnished is an immensely great right and must always be protected. Once Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu says that Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the Sahaba, "Tadruna man al-muflis?" Do you know who a muflis, who a destitute is? So they said, "Al-muflis fina man la dirham lahu wa la dinar." That the muflis is he who has no dirham or dinar. So then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "No, the muflis of my ummah on the day of judgment will be one who will come with many prayers, fasts and zakah, but he will have come having abused this person, slandered that person, unlawfully consumed the wealth of such a person, shed the blood of another person, and having hit such a person. Then this wronged person will be compensated from his good deeds, and if his good deeds were to finish, then the wronged person's bad deeds will be given to the person who wronged him, and then he will be thrown into the fire." Now, if we look at this hadith, Allah doesn't even talk about physically abusing somebody first. He begins talking about abuse this person, slander this person. Because in Islam, I mentioned the other day as well, there is no such thing as sticks and stones will break my bones, names will never hurt me. In Islam, names do hurt. Not just Islam, generally names hurt. And often the impact of verbal or emotional abuse can be a lot more than physical abuse. Not that that's any okay, but it's just we often downplay verbal and mental abuse because they aren't expressed in as dramatic a way as physical abuse. Anyway. وَلَا تَلْمِزُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا. Do not defame yourself. Meaning, if you start to mock one another, then at the end of the day, what you'll be doing is mocking yourselves. Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says in the hadith, "Al-mu'minuna karajul wahid in ishtaka 'aynuhu ishtaka kulluhu in ishtaka ra'suhu ishtaka kulluhu." That the believers are like one single individual. If his eye hurts, his whole body is in pain, and if his head hurts, his whole body is in pain. So if we start abusing one Muslim, then that abuse will come back and hit us, because this is what we are, a community of people. And as a result, each person in that community needs to be respected. وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ. According to some of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, they say that in Medina we used to have a few names, some of us, 2 or 3 names. So when the Prophet ﷺ came to us and we informed him, and then we told him that some of us like, so for example, if one person has 3 names, but there might be a name or a few names in there that he doesn't like. So then these verses were revealed in relation to that. See, the problem we have nowadays is that we think that as long as my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is good, then I don't have to worry about anybody else. So we will pray, we will give zakah, we will do hajj every year even. But then when it comes to how we speak to and how we treat others, then there are no respecting of any rights. Rather, the rights of the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are completely trampled over. But on the Day of Judgment, just like a person will have to ensure that they are free from punishment or free from error when it comes to the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the same way they will need to free themselves from their other servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala whose rights that they may have trampled over. And not until that person has had their account settled, nobody's going anywhere. And this is it, you see. To speak, it's very easy to say what we want. And we learn from the story of Aisha radiallahu anha, who, when those Sahaba radiallahu anhum, who repeated the rumour and what was said about them. So, we need to be very careful about what we say. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu says, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that a servant, he says a word which is pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but this servant pays no attention to it. But because of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to elevate his rank. And then on the other hand, you have a servant who says a word which is displeasing to Allah. Now this person, again, he pays no attention to it, but because of this, he will continue to fall in Jahannam. And we know of a number of occasions where the Prophet ﷺ had refused to pray the Janazah Salah over people who had money, who still had money borrowed from them. They still owed people money. So if they were in debt, the Prophet ﷺ would have to ask, does this person have any debts? And when the Sahaba radiallahu anhu would say that yes, then the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't lead the prayer over them. Now, the only way we can do this is to truly follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and genuinely want good for everybody else. That's why in the Hadeed, the Prophet ﷺ says, "La yu'minu ahadukum hatta yuhibba li akhihi ma yuhibbu li nafsihi." None of you will become a true believer until he loves for his brother that which he loves for himself. Often it's our lack of respect for one another that causes us to behave in such a way. In fact, talking about mockery, Aisha radiallahu anha once, she said about Safiya radiallahu anha that Safiya is a woman who is, and then she motioned like this, meaning with her hands she motioned to indicate that Safiya was short. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that indeed you have said a word which, if mixed with the waters of the oceans of the world, would dilute it. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud radiyallahu anhu would say that calamities hinge on words, and I fear mocking a dog lest I be turned into a dog. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues, and he speaks about thinking ill of one another or having suspicion. So Allah says, O believers, اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن, refrain from much suspicion, for indeed suspicion is a sin, and do not spy. Meaning, again, this is another illness that we have, that we simply hear something or see somebody doing something and immediately we jump to conclusions. Rather, what we should be doing is giving them benefit of the doubt. In fact, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu would say, do not think anything but good about a word uttered by your believing brother, as long as you can find a good interpretation for it. And can you imagine? None of us would ever think of desecrating the Kaaba, the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We hold the Kaaba as one of the greatest symbols of Islam. Yet once Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu says, I saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam performing tawaf around the Kaaba and saying that مَا أَطْيَبَكِ وَمَا أَطْيَبَ رِيحِكَ, that how pure you are and how pure is your fragrance. مَا أَعْظَمَكِ, and how great you are and how great is your sanctity. By He in whose hands lies the soul of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the sanctity of one believer is greater with Allah than even your sanctity. The sanctity of his wealth, his blood, and that we think nothing of him but good. If you remember when we learnt about the story of Mu'mineen Aisha radiallahu anha, when Ayyub al-Ansari radiallahu anhu, when his wife said to him, that, have you heard what Aisha has done? And then what was his response? That, would you do this? She said, no, astaghfirullah, how could I do something like this? So then he said, Aisha is better than you. So if we're unwilling to think about ourselves that we would be guilty or we would do something like this, then we shouldn't think likewise of somebody else. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she says in hadith that beware of suspicion, for indeed suspicion is the greatest lie. Do not spy or eavesdrop. Do not fall into rivalry, and do not envy, hate, or turn away from one another. Be the servants of Allah as brothers. And in another hadith, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, the ya ma'ashara man, the old group of those who have believed with their tongues but Iman has not yet entered their hearts. Do not backbite the Muslims, or do not search for their faults. For he who searches for the faults of others, Allah will seek out his faults, and whoever's faults Allah seeks out, then Allah will disgrace him even in his own home. And this is it. Following this suspicion, Allah mentions about backbiting. That وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا, and let not one of you backbite another. Would one of you like to consume the flesh of his brother? He would abhor it. And again, this is one of the greatest ills of our society, that it has become embedded in our character and in our conversations. And we fail to recognize it as a sin. So casually we will talk about one another. And when somebody says, look, brother, I don't think you should say that, behind his back. Well, I have the courage to say in front of his face. That's the response that we give. Or, I've said it before in front of him. Every time we say it behind his back is backbiting. So even if we've said it once before to him in his face, when you say it again, it's still backbiting. And this is what we have to understand. The act of doing this, whether a person has the guts to say it in front of their face or has said it before, whether it's true or it doesn't matter, it's backbiting. Once the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum, "Atadruna mal ghiba?" Do you know what ghiba is, what backbiting is? So they says, Allah wa Rasuluhu a'lam, that Allah and His Messenger know best. So he said, "Dhikruka akhaka bima yakrah." Simple. That you say something about your brother that he dislikes in his absence. So someone asked that, "O Prophets of Allah, what if what I'm saying about him is true?" So then the Prophet ﷺ said that if it's true, then you've backbited him. And if it's false, then you've got one step ahead. فَقَدْ بَهَتَّهُ, then you have slandered him. So being true doesn't make it okay. It is still backbiting. And the reason why we are instructed to refrain from this is because this creates animosity. It creates ill thoughts of others in other people's minds. And this is why it's not about relaying the truth. Who are we? Why do we feel that we have a responsibility to ensure that everybody knows about everybody else? Let us look at our own selves. If we were to look into the mirror and look at our own faults, then I'm sure we'll find enough to preoccupy us to have to worry about others. And Allah says here that, look, would you backbite one another? Would any one of you love to eat the flesh of your dead brother? No, you would abhor it. Therefore fear Allah, indeed Allah is oft returning merciful. And if you remember when we learnt about the story of Ma'iz radiyallahu anhu, he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said, "O Prophets of Allah, purify me." Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned away from him. So he had confessed the zina. And each time that he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam turned away. And then the fourth time, the Prophet ﷺ asked the Sahaba radiyallahu anhu, has he gone mad? And then he asked, is he drunk? So they tested him, they found out that he wasn't drunk. So then the Prophet ﷺ said, okay, go away and punish him. So he was punished. Then one of the Sahaba relates that we were traveling with the Prophet ﷺ, and then one man was saying to another that look at this man, Allah had concealed his fault, yet his soul didn't let him rest in peace until he came and he confessed to the Prophet ﷺ of his sin, and then he was stoned like the stoning of a dog. So the Prophet ﷺ didn't say nothing. When they were traveling, they came across the carcass of a donkey. So the Prophet ﷺ said, where are these two people I heard earlier on talking? So they were brought. So the Prophet ﷺ said, here, go and eat of the carcass of this donkey. So they said, Ya Rasulullah, how can we eat this? This is haram. So the Prophet ﷺ said that which you are consuming of the flesh of your Muslim brother is far worse than this. That which you are consuming of your Muslim brother earlier on, the flesh of his, was far worse than this. But you are speaking ill of him here. By Allah, I can see him diving into the rivers of Jannah. So, backbiting is a great sin, and especially when we've got nothing to do. Now we're all in lockdown. People have nothing better to do. And now what are people doing? They're all on video calls and on Zoom, on house party and whatever. And what we're doing, talking about other people. So, because now we're not working. May Allah protect us all. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakari wa untha, wa ja'alnakum shu'uba wa qaba'ila li ta'arafu. That, O people, we have created you, male and female, and we have made you from different valleys and tribes so that you recognize one another. During the conquest of Makkah, when it was time for Salah, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Sayyidina Bilal radiyallahu anhu to call out the adhan. Now, one of the pagan Qurayshis, he said, thank God my father died before this happened, and he did not have to see this bad day. And another man, Harith ibn Hisham, he remarked, could Muhammad not find anyone better than this black crow to sound the adhan in the sacred mosque? So Abu Sufyan, he said, I do not wish to say anything for fear that the Master of the heavens will inform him, meaning inform the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So then Jibreel alayhi salatu wasallam came down and informed the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about this conversation, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam called them and they admitted it. Now, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the color of a person's skin is nothing. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says in Hadeed, Inna Allah la yandru ila suwarikum wa amwalikum, walaki yandru ila qulubikum wa a'malikum. That Allah does not look at your appearances and your wealth, rather He looks at your hearts and your actions. Once the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, again this is on the conquest of Makkah, he performed tawaf of the Kaaba, and in this state of riding his camel, he delivered the sermon, and then he said, Alhamdulillah alladhi adhaba ankum ubbiyat al-jahiliyyah wa takabburaha, an-nasu rajulan barrun taqiyyun كريم على الله وفاجر شقي هين على الله ثم تلا يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم, meaning this verse. Meaning, again, this clarifies what this verse is about. That all praises to Allah who removed from you the pride of Jahiliyyah and its arrogance. Now the people are of two types. People are of two types. One, a man who is righteous, fearful of Allah, and he is honorable to Allah, or a man who is sinful, wretched, and he is disgraced and insignificant in front of Allah. And then he recited this verse, Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min dhakari wa untha. And again, the connection with this hadith, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. At the end of the day, the most honorable from amongst you to Allah is he who has the most taqwa. In a hadith, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Innaka lasta bi khayrin min ahmar wala aswad illa an tafdilahu bi taqwa." You are no better than a red-skinned person, nor a black-skinned person, unless you excel him in taqwa. So that is what matters in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was taqwa. Or else, now we've got all of this about rights and human rights and everything. This was all the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had done this more than 1400 years ago. The man who used to call out the adhan in the masjid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Bilal radiyallahu anhu. And you know what? Not just Bilal. And you know what the amazing thing about the adhan is that those Sahaba radiyallahu anhum who used to come to the masjid would hear the Imam, would hear the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam lead them in prayer. But the adhan, everybody in Medina had it. But who was given the responsibility? Sayyidina Bilal radiyallahu anhu, a former black Abyssinian slave. And there was another person as well. That was given the responsibility of adhan. Who was it? Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Maktum radiyallahu anhu. And who was he? Again, we look down upon people. He was blind. He had a disability. Yet in the eyes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most honorable amongst you is he who has the most taqwa. La yandurullah. Allah does not look at your appearances and your wealth. He looks at your hearts and your actions. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. The Bedouin have said that we have believed. What happened was, this was actually revealed in relation to Banu Asad. A few members of that tribe came up to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Medina during a severe drought. Now they weren't sincere believers, but they expressed that they wanted to believe. Why? To seek financial help from the Muslims, from the sadaqah. Now, they weren't Muslim, and they did, they'd spread filth in Medina. They increased the prices of necessary items. SubhanAllah. Reminds you of what's been happening here as well. During the lockdown, people unfortunately took advantage of this and took advantage of the weaknesses of people and people's vulnerabilities. And we had shops raising their prices sky high and robbing people. SubhanAllah. So they were doing this as well. And what they were doing, they weren't just increasing the prices, but they were increasing the prices of necessary items. And then they would say to the Prophet that our becoming Muslim is a favor, meaning we've done you a favor. How? They said, look, we've embraced Islam without any conflict. Others, you had to fight with them for years and months, and then they became Muslim. But we, without any conflict, so you should value us more. And this was in a way, very disrespectful to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah clarifies that don't say amanna, because what does Allah say? قَالَتِ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا. The Bedouin have said, we have believed. Allah says, قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا. Don't say we have believed. وَلَكِنْ قُولُوا أَسْلَمْنَا. Rather say we have submitted. وَلَمَّا يَدْخُلِ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. and Iman has not yet entered your hearts. And the ulama agree that there is a difference between Iman and Islam. Iman is belief. Iman is belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam is to submit. Now, a person can submit by merely proclaiming the kalima and saying that they are Muslim. And by doing so, they are to be treated as a Muslim. In relation to their Iman, what's in their hearts, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. That's why when it came to the hypocrites, they would say that they believed they were Muslim. But only after Surah Al-Munafiqun was revealed, then it became clear who the hypocrites were because of all the signs. But otherwise, after that, nowadays there are no hypocrites as such in that manner. So if a person proclaims the kalima and says that they're Muslim, then we have to take them at face value. Iman, that is something that is with Allah. But what we have to understand is whether it's Islam or Iman, both of them have very close connections with the a'mal that we do. So a person's actions are a manifestation of what is in their hearts. So Islam, Iman, very important, but along with it comes the a'mal. And unfortunately, we have some who very erroneously are trying to push this. That's no, Iman, Islam, it's just your relationship with God and that's it. Yes, it is your relationship with God, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that relationship requires a prescribed deen, religion, sharia. Or else this was the people of the book. They left it to just a relationship. But Islam, it isn't just a relationship. It requires the 5 salawat, the prayer. It requires much more. Anyway, with this we finished Surah Al-Hujuraat. We then recited Surah Al-Qaf, Meccan Surah again. This surah mostly contains subjects related to the Day of Judgment, resurrection, the reckoning, Jannah, Jahannam, Allah's reward and punishment. Also, the Prophet ﷺ would recite Surah Al-Qaf in the Friday khutbah, and according to some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, during the Eid khutbah as well. In this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about many of the stories of the people of the past as a reminder. So, and Allah speaks about the punishments that fell upon them. We then recited, there is mention in Surah Al-Qaf about a people called Ashabul Ras. Ras means a well that hasn't been built by bricks or stones. Now, these people of Ras that Allah refers to here are Ashabul Ras, are the remnants of Thamud. So, the people of Thamud, when they were punished, about 4,000 of them remained, meaning they escaped, and they were with Sayyidina Salih alayhi salatu wasalam, and they took shelter in Hadramaut in Yemen. And Sayyidina Salih alayhi salatu wasalam was with him. And according to some narrations, there was a well there, they stayed near that well. And Salih alayhi salatu wasalam passed away there. And according to some, that's why it's called Hadramaut. Hadramaut meaning death overcame. So Salih alayhi salatu wasalam, he passed away there, and the place became known as Hadramaut. Anyway, these people, they settled there permanently. Later on, their descendants took to idol worship. Allah sent them a prophet, and what they do, they kill the prophet. So then they were punished, and Allah mentions this. فَهِيَ خَاوِيَةٌ عَلَىٰ عُرُوشِهَا. So there they are, fallen down on their roofs. And Allah completely rendered, and again this well was destroyed, which they relied upon highly, and all of their houses and palaces lay in ruins. We then recite, we then recite Surah Al-Dhariyat. Surah Al-Dhariyat is a Meccan surah. The matter of the subjects in Surah Al-Dhariyat are similar to Surah Al-Qaf, meaning hereafter, resurrection, the judgments of the hereafter, Allah's rewards and punishments. And Allah speaks about those who do good, and He gives a prescription for piety and to become of the chosen servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those who have taqwa, Allah says, إِنَّ الْمُتَّقِينَ فِي جَنَّاتٍ وَعُيُونٍ. Indeed, those who have taqwa will be in gardens and springs, receiving what their Lord will have given to them. And before this, they were good in their deeds. They used to sleep little in the night, and in the hours before dawn, they used to pray for forgiveness. And in their wealth, there was a right for the one who asks and the one who is deprived. So one of their qualities is that they used to pray salah throughout the night and sleep less throughout the night. Now, even Allah mentions about their spending. SubhanAllah, wherever we've learnt about Iman, and one of the pillars that's always been mentioned over and over again is about spending in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So right at the beginning of the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ وَيُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ. So those who believe without seeing, meaning they haven't seen Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they establish prayer, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. And from that which we have given them, they spend. And over again, here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He speaks about the qualities of the muttaqeen. And what does He say? That they spend their night in prayer. So again, similar to Surah Al-Baqarah, where Allah mentioned about they believe, and what do? They they establish prayer. And then here again, Allah says they spend the nights in prayer. And what else do? In their wealth, there is a right for one who asks and one who is deprived. SubhanAllah, this month of Ramadan is a time to give. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about him that he was like the generous wind. It hits everybody. He was like that. He was very generous during the month of Ramadan. Near to the end of Surah Al-Dhariyat, Allah, there's a very famous verse, Allah says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. And I have not created man and jinn except that they worship me. This is our sole purpose in this dunya, which we've forgotten. Our sole purpose here isn't to become engrossed in the world. Our purpose isn't to develop an attachment with the dunya. Our purpose in this world is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing else. And that's what should come first. That should come before everything. And only when we do this and we take the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be our focus and our focal point in our lives, our most important priority, then only can we expect Allah to look after us as well. We then recite Surah Al-Tur. Allah says, by the Mount of Tur, وَكِتَابٍ مَسْتُورٍ, and by a book written on an unrolled scroll. وَالْبَيْتِ الْمَعْمُورِ, and by the populated house. At the beginning of the surah, Allah takes an oath by mentioning a few things. The Mount Tur is the same as Mount Sinai, which is in Madian. And this is where Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Allah says, وَالْبَيْتِ الْمَعْمُورِ, meaning the populated house. Now, this we learnt about when we recited Surah Al-Isra or Surah Banu Israel, when we learnt about the night's journey of ascension of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Al-Bayt al-Ma'mur is the Kaaba of the heavens. And from that hadith we learnt that when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam came upon Al-Bayt al-Ma'mur, he saw Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam leaning against it. That he was the one who had built the Kaaba in this world, so his reward is that he will be near the Kaaba of the heavens. And the Prophet ﷺ says about this, Al-Bayt al-Ma'mur, that every day 70,000 angels visit it, and they will not have a turn to be able to come and visit again till the Day of Judgment. Now, these few verses, Allah takes an oath by mentioning a few things, and then He says, "Inna azab rabbika lawaqi'," that the punishment of your Lord is sure to fall and sure to happen. Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu once recited Surah Tur, and then when he came into this verse or these verses, meaning "Inna azab rabbika lawaqi' ma lahu min dafi'," Allah continues to talk about the punishment. He says it said that he became ill for about 20 days. And no one would know what caused his illness, but it was because of these verses. Sayyidina Jubair ibn Mut'im radiyallahu anhu says, before Islam, I once went to Medina to negotiate regarding the prisoners of the Battle of Badr. When I arrived there, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in Maghrib Salah and he was reciting Surah Tur, and I could hear his voice. And when he came to these verses, "Inna adhab rabbika lawaqi' ma lahu min dafi'," that the punishment of your Lord is sure to happen, there is nothing to push it back. He says that it felt that as though my heart would burst through fear, and he instantly embraced Islam. SubhanAllah. Then Allah speaks about the punishment of the hereafter, and then He speaks about those who have believed and their reward. And He says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَاتَّبَعَتْهُمْ ذُرِّيَّتُهُمْ بِإِيمَانٍ أَلْحَقْنَا بِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ. That those who believed and their children followed them in belief, then we will join their children with them. Meaning, this is another thing that, in a hadith actually, the Prophet ﷺ says that Allah elevates the ranks of the believers' children to the rank of their parents, even though the children don't deserve that same rank. Why? So that the eyes of those parents are comforted. Meaning, the actions that we do has an impact on our children. And if we do good, then according to this hadith, which comes under the tafsir of this verse as well, then our children will join us as well. In the hadith actually, once the Prophet ﷺ said that when a person enters Jannah, he will inquire about his parents and his wife and his children as to where they are. So he will be told that they haven't attained your grade. So then the person will say that, Allah, I worked not only for myself but for all of them. So then Allah will elevate them all to the same rank. And likewise the other way around as well. The children we leave behind, if we don't leave children who will pray for us, then we're on our own. One hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that in Jannah, Allah shall elevate the grade of a righteous person. So then he will turn around to say, Allah, how did I earn this? So then Allah will say that through your sons making dua to me to forgive you. In a hadith, Prophet ﷺ says about how a person leaves nothing behind that will benefit him except for, and he mentions a few and says, waladun salih, a pious child. We then recite Surah Al-Najm. Surah Al-Najm is a Meccan surah. It's actually the first complete surah. That was revealed in Mecca. And the first surah in which there is a verse of sajda. And amazing, when the Prophet ﷺ, he recited it and he prostrated, then in front of him everybody prostrated, even the disbelievers that were there. But there was one proud, arrogant man who didn't. He picked up some soil and put it on his forehead and said, "This is sufficient." Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu narrates hadith, says, "I saw this man lying dead in a state of disbelief." So at the beginning of one Najm, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears an oath by a number of things. And again, he swears on the truthfulness of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I'll just translate and explain as I go along. One najmi idha hawa, and by the star when it goes down. Your companion ma dhalla sahibukum wa ma ghawa. Your companion has neither erred nor has he gone astray. And because what happened is the Meccans would say that he has gone astray and left the religion of our forefathers. And he has made things up. We've done a number of times that he has made things up. Allah says, وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. He doesn't speak from desire. Never mind speak from desire. Everything he says has been revealed to him. إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيُ يُوحَىٰ. And who has taught him this? عَلَّمَهُ شَدِيدُ الْقُوَىٰ ذُو مِرَّةٍ فَاسْتَوَىٰ. That the one of strong faculties has taught him, one of vigor. فَاسْتَوَىٰ. So he stood. وَهُوَ بِالْأُفُقِ الْأَعْلَى. While he was on the upper horizon. Meaning, this, who taught him this? Jibreel Amin alayhi salatu wassalam. And he was on the upper horizon. Then he drew closer and came down. So he was at a distance. فَكَانَ قَابَ قَوْسَيْنِ أَوْ أَدْنَى. So he was at a distance of 2 bows. Meaning if you were to join 2 bows together, he was that far away. Meaning Jibreel Amin alayhi salatu wassalam, when he came and he saw the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, this is how close he was. فَأَوْحَى إِلَىٰ عَبْدِهِ مَا أَوْحَى. So then he revealed to his slave what he revealed. Meaning this refers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this again, once Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was walking in Mecca and then he heard his name being called out. So he says, I looked around, couldn't find him. Then he looked up and then he saw Jibreel Amin in his true form. And he says that he saw him, he saw the angel that he had seen in the cave. So then he came home saying, Zambiluni, Zambiluni. Now, in that, he saw Jibreel Amin cover the sky with his form, and he says, I saw him in his original form then. So, this is what the Meccans would say, that, why is he lying? So, Allah says, مَا كَذَبَ الْفُؤَادُ مَا رَأَى. The heart did not lie to what it saw. أَفَتُمَارُونَهُ عَلَى مَا يَرَى. That do you argue with him over that which he saw? Meaning, argue with somebody over something that you can speculate about. Okay, you've heard this, but I don't think it's true. Or someone told you this, yeah, but somebody else told me the opposite. He's saying he saw it with his own eyes, so why are you arguing with him now? And then, never mind here, he's seen him as well at another time. وَلَقَدْ رَآهُ نَزْلَةً أُخْرَى. And then he saw him at another time. عِنْدَ سِدْرَةِ الْمُنْتَهَى. Near the lote tree. عِنْدَهَا جَنَّةُ الْمَأْوَى. There you have the Jannatul Ma'wa, meaning the paradise of abode. So here, now, with some of these verses, for example, لَقَدْ رَأَى مِنْ آيَاتِ رَبِّهِ الْكُبْرَى, and so on, the ulama have differed. In fact, the Sahaba radiallahu anhu have differed as to whether the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw Allah in that journey or not. according to Aisha radiallahu anha and Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anha and others, he didn't see Allah, rather he saw some of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I mentioned this the other day anyway, but according to some others, he did see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Surah An-Najm, Allah then speaks about the false gods of the Meccans. فَرَأَيْتُمُ اللَّاتَ وَالْعُزَّى وَمَنَاةَ الثَّالِثَةَ الْأُخْرَى لَكُمْ بِالذَّكَرِ وَلَهُ الْأُنْثَى. That do you see Lat and Uzza and Manat? And what would happen is that they would say that these are the daughters of Allah. So they say that, so Allah will say that for you, you've got all the male children, and then you want females for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. تِلْكَ إِذًا قِسْمَةٌ ضِيضَى. This is an unjust distribution, meaning you distribute in a way that suits you. Then further on there's a verse, أَفَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي تَوَلَّى وَأَعْطَى قَلِيلًا وَأَكْدَى. Once a man embraced Islam, and one of his friends, he started telling him off for abandoning the religion of his forefathers. So he said, look, I fear being punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the friend said to him, look, if you make a certain payment to me, then I'll take this punishment on behalf of you then. So you'll be spared from the punishment. So he paid him. Now then he said, I need some more. So then they drew up a document and they signed it and everything. According to some narrations, this was Walid ibn Mughira, who was inclined towards Islam, but his friend stopped him. So these verses were revealed. Did you see the one who turned away and gave a little and stopped? Does he have knowledge of the unseen, whereby he sees, meaning he sees what he believes? So that's mentioned here. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, and I mentioned the other day as well, that once the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that, do you know why Allah gave Ibrahim the title of Alladhi Waffa, meaning the one who fulfilled? Then he said, because he used to recite the following dhikr every morning and evening: فَسُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ حِينَ تُمْسُونَ وَحِينَ تُصْبِحُونَ وَلَهُ الْحَمْدُ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَعَشِيًّا وَحِينَ تُظْهِرُونَ. The narrations part of it. We then recited Surah Al-Qamar. Allah begins the surah by saying, اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر, meaning the hour has drawn near and the moon has split asunder. The Meccans demanded a sign from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, if I split the moon, will you believe? They said yes, and then he split the moon. This was a miracle. This did take place. The Meccans, even then, after seeing the miracle, they said, you know what, you've enchanted us and showed us, we'll ask others from the other cities if they've seen it. So there were some travellers who arrived in Mecca. They asked them, did you see this? They said, yeah, we saw this as well. So it did happen during the time of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. However, even then, I think it was maybe just about one of them believed after seeing this. So Allah just reminds the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that this is what they've done in the past as well, no matter what sign came to them. And then Allah mentions about a number of the prophets: Sayyidina Hud, Sayyidina Salih, Sayyidina Lut, and Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. He mentions their stories, and every time Allah mentions a story, He says, فَكَيْفَ كَانَ عَذَابِي وَنُذُرُ. So how was my punishment? So throughout this surah, Allah mentions about the punishments of these previous nations. We then recite Surah Ar-Rahman. Surah Ar-Rahman is a very beautiful surah. Surah Al-Qamar mainly spoke about the rebellious nations of the past who were punished for rejecting the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then each description of punishment was followed by فَكَيْفَ كَانَ عَذَابِي وَنُذُرُ, that how was my punishment and my warnings. And this sentence was repeated a number of times to warn people against similar punishments. Then in this surah, Allah describes His bounties of this world and the hereafter. And after each bounty, Allah says, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of the bounties of your Lord will you deny? So just as فَكَيْفَ كَانَ عَذَابِي وَنُذُرِ was in Surah Al-Qamar, in Surah Al-Rahman you've got فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, meaning which of the signs of your Lord will you deny? Now, this surah has been classified by some as Meccan, by some as Madani. In this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about His signs, His bounties, how He taught mankind, how every different, so the sun, the moon, they're all on a certain measure. Allah speaks about. So again, there's bounties within this world and some of the bounties of the hereafter. So what will the people of Jannah enjoy on the Day of Judgment? So these are also mentioned in Surah Al-Rahman. We then recite Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Waqi'ah meaning the imminent event, and that mainly deals with, this surah mainly deals with the punishments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Well, mainly with the hereafter, but the punishments of Allah are mentioned in here. Once Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Masud radiyallahu anhu, when he was on his deathbed, Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu visited him. So Sayyidina Uthman asked him, what are you suffering from? So Abdullah ibn Masud said, my sins. So Sayyidina Uthman said, do you need anything? So Abdullah ibn Masud radiyallahu anhu said, yes, I need Allah's mercy. So Uthman radiyallahu anhu said, shall I call a doctor for you? Abdullah ibn Masud said, the doctor's the one who gave me the illness. So then Sayyidina Uthman said, look, shall I give you an allowance from the public treasury? He said, look, Abdullah ibn Masud said, I've got no need now. And Uthman said, accept it please. You're leaving daughters behind, it will help them. So then Abdullah ibn Masud radiyallahu anhu said that you are worried about my daughters, that they shouldn't suffer from poverty. I have no worry, because I have instructed them to recite Surah Al-Waqi'ah every night. And I have heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, "Man qara'a Surah Al-Waqi'ati kulla laylatin lam tusibhu faqatun abada." Whoever recites Surah Al-Waqi'ah every night will never suffer from poverty. Then, in the surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the final day, which is called the imminent event. And Al-Waqi'ah is one of the names of the Day of Judgment. Allah speaks about the different categories of people that will be on that day. The people on the right, the people on the left, and the punishment of the people of the hereafter, of Jahannam, are mentioned in this surah. The final surah we recited today would be Surah Al-Hadeed. Surah Al-Hadeed is a Madani surah. It means the iron. And it begins the start of a few of the surahs which are named the Musabbihat. Musabbihat meaning the surahs that begin with Sabbaha or Yusabbihu. So, and these are Surah Al-Hadeed, Surah Al-Hashr, Surah Al-Saf, Surah Al-Jum'ah, and Surah Al-Taghabun. And in this verse, according to some of the ulama, the best verse, there's a verse referred to as the best verse, which is هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن وهو بكل شيء عليم. That He is the first, the last, the manifest, and the hidden, and He is the all-knowing about everything. In fact, Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu would say that if the shaitan puts any doubt in anyone's heart and causes skepticism about Allah and about Islam, then he should softly recite the following verse: هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن وهو بكل شيء عليم. In Surah Al-Hadeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the creation of the skies and the earth, And he speaks about belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and speaks about the Messenger himself sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the role of the Messenger, and how we are to respond to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah speaks about the reality of this world, and He reminds us that I've given you so much, and there are so many signs in front of you. So when are you going to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And that's why Allah says, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ وَلَا يَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِ فَطَالَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَمَدُ فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Has not the time come for those who believe, for their hearts to become in awe from the remembrance of Allah and that which has been revealed of the truth? And they should not become like those who were given the book from before, so then time became prolonged over them and their hearts became hard. We have seen so many signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We see them every day. We have the Quran. Yet we keep thinking that we're going to live, and then we'll plan that when I'm after 40 or after 50 or after 60 or when I'm 80, then I'll start praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no guarantee. Now is the time to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's not just about doing a'mal. Here Allah says, أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ. And this doesn't happen overnight. For one's heart to become in awe from the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning for one's a'mal, for one's tasbihat, for one's adhkar, for them to actually have an impact on the heart. This doesn't happen overnight. This comes through years of devotion, supplication, tasbih, dhikr in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only after we've done all of that can we expect then for our hearts to soften when we think and we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the surah, Allah mentions the story of Sayyidina Nuh and Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and their progeny. With that, we finished the recitation of today. May Allah give us all the ability to understand. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.